how do you think that your NDI role and patronage will play in this new role should you succeed?
So, Chair, thank you for the question. I look at, with your kind permission, there are 9 aspects that I think are critical for me and why perhaps I actually wanted to get myself into this. The first aspect, and based on my experience and working with the National Democratic Institute, is the need to build public confidence in the IEBC. That is very critical. Recent surveys have demonstrated that only 1 out of 4 Kenyans trust the IEBC. In my experience, that is the lowest in 20 years that we have. So I think it is extremely critical that we build public confidence in the IEBC. The second aspect that I think my place sits very well is the need to strengthen the engagement of citizens and address voter apathy. Now, if you look at the participation rates of the voter turnouts in the last election, at 65, again, that is the least in 2 decades in this country. And I think we need people who can actually look at it, build policies that can address it, design strategies that are geared towards addressing it, and then offer the oversight necessary really to achieve it. The third aspect, and I think if you look at most of the post-election evaluation reports, including for the IEBC itself, is the issue of corporate communication. Now, I think that the corporate communication in the IEBC has been very disjointed and non-responsive. And I think that there is need to actually look at advancing and building up a corporate communication that is responsive, particularly to the youth population that we have around this country. And that is something that I think I can. Fourthly, I'm looking at the element of the voter registration and the integrity of that voter roll, as well as the voter education. And I think it is very primary that if I'm successful, that these are issues that I will be very interested in addressing using my experiences, using my data skills and all that really to address it. For instance, we talk about universal suffrage, but I think very little has been talked about equality of the suffrage, which I think is very necessary in the mandate of the IEBC to be looked at. How do we gain, how do we advance equality of the suffrage? Number 5 is the place of technology. How do we leverage technology? How do we leverage the management science tools, in my opinion, that incorporates statistical tools, geospatial tools to advance the role and mandate of IEBC? And those are practically areas that I think I'm able to. Chair, if it looks like I'm going and going, if you give me 1 minute, I will finish. And
okay,
then
just mention the 4, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I also think that there is the whole place of partnerships and relationship building. And this should not just be partnership and relationship building for the sake, they might be mutually beneficial. The other element I believe that we need to address, there are more than 13 electoral units that have never had representation. And I think that's really an urgent issue that we also need to deal with when I get to IEBC. And of course, then there is the issue of electoral reforms so that the electoral environment facilitates free, fair, credible elections. And finally, really the issue of boundary delimitation. And I want to tie it with the 2/3, which I think are very critical issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Omondi, one of the key competencies that you have listed in your CV is that you contributed to the review of the Elections Act, the Political Parties Act, the IEBC Act, the Election Offences Act, and the Elections Campaign Financing and the regulations. Now, kindly appraise this panel on the nature of your contribution and state how it made the electoral system more effective.
Thank you. Yes, so in the process of exercising my responsibilities at the National Democratic Institute, engagement on reforms is a key aspect of it. And yes, I have contributed in the reforms of Political Parties Act, in the reforms of Elections Act, and all those laws that you have spoken about. Now, in the process of designing reforms in this country, one of the things that goes behind the scenes are disputes and contestations around the reform itself. And what NDI does is to facilitate an environment that enables actors from different sectors to build consensus and dialogue around those reforms. So in many instances, I know people see only what goes to Parliament, but the processes that really go behind the scenes are never recognized. And so NDI facilitates processes of building consensus, bringing experts, drawing from lessons across the globe, and helping advance electoral reforms wherever we work. So Kenya is just a case, and Denis, because of my role, has been at the very center of all those processes.
So how has it made the electoral system more effective?
Now, let me just give a few examples, and perhaps that really traverses across time. When we started strengthening political parties, for instance, the nomination processes of political parties was very chaotic. And to strengthening internal reforms of political parties, today people actually pride themselves in saying that they are party primaries. Of course, there are still reforms that are required, but you can see semblance of a process that members go through to identify their members. The second one is actually what the sitting here. I actually find myself very proud because I was part of the people who pushed to have the Political Parties Liaison Committee, Section 38 of the Political Parties Act, put. And I pride myself because we are talking when they have been recognized in spaces like this one to determine the people, the referees on electoral process. And so, yes, in a number of ways, my contribution has been very effective in terms of advancing electoral democracy in Kenya.